Good morning and welcome back to the Teacher's Wake Up Call. And I am celebrating, albeit 2 days late, my 27th year in teaching. Yes, because my first true teaching contract wasn't at the start of a school year, wasn't in August or September. No. I started teaching in earnest in December, literally 2 weeks before Christmas break. And I've told the story before, my first teaching contract, that first year of teaching, was English as a second language because the principal misread my resume. He thought I had a legitimate Quebec-issued diploma in teaching English as a second language, misread my resume. It was actually my Michigan TOEFL certificate teaching overseas English as a foreign language. And it's kind of like the equivalent of the DELF, but like a B1, like basic teaching English as a second language. But I mean, I was fully bilingual. There wasn't an issue, but I think that's what the Michigan was. And I think now it's like the Cambridge, but I actually have a diploma from Michigan University. Go Wolverines, go Michigan. You know, every time, every bowl season, football comes along, college football comes along, and I am for the Wolverines. Let's go Wolverines, okay? Because I legitimately spent a weekend and got a Michigan issued diploma. So yeah, so basically, I digress. I started teaching in earnest English as a second language, not French. And I want to take the time this year to recognize and acknowledge that I don't want to say my path was atypical, but to be where I am right now, I made different encounters I need more coffee. I encountered different people that allowed me to be where I am right now. And one of those people, dude named Jean-François, first teacher I met when I started teaching English as a second language. And because of him, I ended up teaching French, mother tongue, in the school where he was working. Because initially, that second school year, all right, I was slated to teach ethics. Well, it was moral education back then. It wasn't officially called ethics. And I believe it was drama. I think it was drama with zero background. But I mean, I had background in moral education because that's my diploma. My diploma is in French mother tongue and moral education, or AKA ethics. And yes, do I have any morals, would say my friends. That's the kind of friends that I have. And then he calls me up and he says, there's a lack of French teachers where I am right now. We need one. Would you be willing? And I said, yeah. So I literally dropped the contract that I had at the other school and I went bye. And I hadn't signed anything. So I spoke with the principals like, look, as much as I would love to be here, there's something with my name on it. And I went. And because of him, I ended up being, in more ways than one, because initially, I just had like a part-time contract, and then because I replaced that teacher a couple of times, and I ended up teaching full-time, the school board that I worked for at the time called me up and said, hey, did you know that you actually are owed back pay because, you know, you were teaching full time, so you're actually not only do we owe you back pay, but we also need to give you a new contract because You are now on the priority list. And yay. So yeah. That was amazing. That was an amazing, an encounter. To this day, every time because he knows that I work for Comic-Con, he comes by my booth and he says, hi, how's it going? And that's always fun. I think he's retired now because he was older than me, but like, I owe him quite a bit. The second person is actually my husband, indirectly. His sister, so my sister-in-law, works for the current school board that I work for. And at the time, through him, she would tell me, hey, our board is looking for French teachers. So you've got to understand, at the start of your career, when you literally just got into priority pool and you are hoping that one day you'll get a tenure track position, the last thing that you want to do is to quit that school board to go to a new school board that you've never been to before. That level of risk taking was not high in me at the time as a kid. But because of that, I'm going to call it what it was, constant nagging and reminding, they're looking for French teachers. I think it was the 99, it was the 2001, or 2001 to 2002 school year. I had already accepted a contract at another school, once again a part-time contract, and that year my husband and I had moved. We moved from one neighborhood in the city to another neighborhood, and I remember one morning stepping outside of the house, the apartment, and saying, oh, it's going to be nice working in this neighborhood. And I stopped and I said, I'm not going to be working in this neighborhood. It was a weird thought to have. Considering that I was working once again in the West Island, which was like an hour bus ride away from me. I didn't drive back then. So then I said to myself, why would I have that idea? Why would I have that thought? But that morning or that week, let's face it, it was like over 20 years ago, I had the urge to drop off my resume at different schools in that neighborhood because I once again only had a part-time contract. And part-time work, it's difficult. I mean, yes, you can do substitution, but that's not always a given, considering that, sometimes it doesn't fit in your schedule. But I said to myself, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? They call me for a full day of substitution. I said, well, I can only do half. I don't know. So I dropped off my resume at, I think, 3 different schools. One was the school literally next door to my apartment, which was part of the same school board I was working for at the time. And I dropped my resume off another school, an English school. And within 20 minutes, not even, the principal called me back saying, I need you now. I don't know where you are. Can you come back? We need to talk. And he was offering me, on a silver platter practically, full-time, in French, all French. And for that I had to quit my other job because I had already accepted the contract at the other board. And I explained to him, I'm quitting, and quitting at this school board means I will be off priority pool because I'm refusing to take a contract. So I told him, I didn't even ask, I told him, the condition that I'm accepting this it will be that this becomes a tenure track position. I know it's not, because it's technically a replacement, but you have to understand I'm giving up 3 years, 2.5, it wasn't really 3, 2.5 years at another school board where I ended up being on priority pool by sheer luck, but I didn't tell him that. Sheer luck, I ended up on a priority pool in 2 years when I know for a fact that there were teachers who had been on priority pool for like 7, 8, 9, 10 years without a contract. So I didn't want to tell him, yeah, no, because at the time you had to complete full-time contracts for the full year in order to end up on priority pool, and it was harder and harder to get full-time contracts depending on where you were working. And I'm not going to spend that much time talking about it, but it was a really weird time. Between 1998 and maybe 2001, 2002, it was supposed to be a time of like great hiring. I don't know how else to explain it. And that's what we were told at university. Our professors said a lot of teachers are going to be retiring, so it'll be a perfect time for you guys to like snatch up jobs and contracts. But in fact, it was very difficult. It was very, very difficult, because especially on the island of Montreal, I can't speak for other boards, it felt like schools were taking all those full-time posts and splitting them up into chunks. So because it was cheaper to pay a part-time teacher than to pay a teacher full-time. So it was hard, and I had the qualifications, and yet, anyway, I digress. So I have to thank my husband, my sister-in-law, and that first principal who hired me, Cecil Humphreys. Shout out to Cec Humphreys. He was the guy who got me that tenure track, because I nagged him every week, maybe not every day, but every week. I would poke my head into his office like, so, any news from the board? Any news from the board? Because I had to. This was my career. This was my life. And I told him, if it doesn't work out at this school, I want to have that possibility of going elsewhere, transferring elsewhere within the board to maybe a different school. But in the end, I ended up spending like 18 years of my career at that school, so I didn't transfer. You know, you say certain things, and then life presents to you a plate that you were not expecting, and it was very tasty. And that school was the best. It was the best meal I could have as a teacher, as a hungry teacher. It was a meal and then some. It was the buffet. It was the buffet. You wanted gifted children, you had it. You wanted problem kids, you had it. You wanted kids that still don't fit in any specific box, you had it. And I had fantastic colleagues. So I ended up it was the best decision ever. So I encountered people at the start of my career. If I could have easily said to GF, to Jean-François, that first, I could have easily said, you know what, thanks for the offer, I'm going to stay here, I'm going to try, moral and drama, but I didn't. I said, sure, where do I go? Where do I sign up? It was those experiences that basically shaped the path that I'm on right now, and turned me into a French second language teacher, because initially I was a French mother tongue teacher, and if you had told me that I was going to become an English second language teacher and then eventually a French second language teacher, I wouldn't have believed you. I would not have believed you, because in my head I was going to teach français langue maternelle, langue d'enseignement, et enseignement moral if I was needed. And now I think I'm one of the only 2 people in my board with that training, officially, formally. I mean, I know that there are specialists, but that's my bad. There are not a lot of people with that diploma. We're a rarity. We are. On that awesome note, and if you're wondering why I'm wearing this kind of like plaid tartan thing, it was the only red and green thing I had at home for the holidays. Oh, and these little candy cane earrings. Thank you, Dollarama. Dollarama with the cute jewelry. You can see, yeah. Have yourselves an awesome day and an awesome weekend.